cannabis industry, but from the related industries that sprout up in support of the cannabis industry. One of the industries we haven't really spent much time discussing is the scientific community and what the cannabis world means for science. Now, Dave and I, disclaimer, we're not scientists, right? We're two guys passionate about ending prohibition in North Dakota as well as the United States. But we're educated folks and we're educated guys, and we read, and these articles again are available online for you to discover and explore for yourself on the various research and exploration and kind of discoveries that people are having in the scientific community in support of cannabis. So just looking at where we are now, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because we've already talked about it on Greener Pastures.
To be fair, Jonah, I have completed my minor in biology.
Oh, look at this man. Okay, to be very fair. See, I'm learning things today. So Dave is a scientist. Perhaps not a cannabis scientist, but a scientist nonetheless. That's awesome, and congrats on that. But in the United States, we haven't been given the fair opportunity to truly research cannabis because of its scheduling status. So we're realistically, as far as United States medicine and scientific understanding, we're kind of in the infancy of what there is to be understood about the science of cannabis. And again, don't take my word for it. This information is available to you, but there are scientists who are suggesting now that there are compounds in cannabis that could transform our understanding not only of plant medicine, but also of human biology. And the further you get into the scientific exploration of cannabis, you learn that numerous major fields in applicable science are impacted by the research of cannabis. I'm talking biology, chemistry, plant genetics, pharmacology, engineering, just to name a few. And as we as a culture are actively seeking ways to progress away from ongoing pharmaceuticals, we're looking for alternative methods of health and wellness. We're looking for things that replace these medications. And what are the alternatives? And cannabis is at the forefront of that charge. And again, we've only begun to scratch the surface of clinical research for the medical and health applications of cannabis. It's why you're now seeing the rise of organizations such as the Institute of Cannabis Research. There's also the Society of Cannabis Clinicians. There's the International Cannabinoid Research Society.
And to be fair, these aren't fly-by-night schools, right? So UCLA, right? Pretty big. We're not talking Walla Walla Washington Community College here. We're talking UCLA. We're talking the Medical Cannabis Center at the University of Vermont. We're talking about the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. We're talking about the University of Washington. These are real universities that are doing real work and have a very good reputation in the field. So we're talking real academia here. We're talking real scientists. It's not like DeVry University or something like that. And no offense to those universities, but
not at all.
They do. It's a lot different when it's them versus when it's, say, Harvard or Stanford.
Oh, yeah.
Even in North Dakota, we're having universities start looking into this a lot. I think it's your neck of the woods.
There is. There has been, and I don't recall if it went official, but I know here in Minot State University, there was definitely some exploration into offering a deeper course within the hemp or kind of cannabis industry. I don't want to speak for Minot State because I could probably Google it right now, but yeah, you are seeing more and more prominent universities. And what this allows for is study. It allows for science. And when we look at a scientific industry right now, according to some research, we're actually United States universities have been producing more research scientists than academia can currently accommodate. And so more scientists are entering the job market than are retiring. And you're looking at a lack of tenured positions, and you're looking at decreased funding and a tight job market. You're looking at fewer and fewer STEM-related jobs in higher education. So where do these scientists go? Where do they take their genius? Where can they apply it? And it's within the world of cannabis. And again, and when we look at the world of cannabis, and what does that mean? And I want to take a quote, and this is from an international study regarding the endocannabinoid system. So something, and I'm speaking, and I'm kind of parroting some of what I've read. Again, not a scientist, but the endocannabinoid system is something that is very natural. It has a lot of natural therapeutic receptors that allow it to connect with parts of our mind. It's why a lot of cannabis research is showing promising results when dealing with a variety of mental health issues as well as PTSD and anxiety. But this is from a study, the endocannabinoid system, a multifaceted therapeutic target. And bear with me here because I'm just going to read what their research has found. The study of cannabinoids was at bay for a very long time, and its therapeutic value cannot be adequately harnessed due to its legal status as prescribed as a drug in most countries. So the research of drugs acting on endocannabinoid systems has seen many ups and downs in the recent past. Presently, what they've discovered, it is known endocannabinoids have a role in the pathology of many disorders and also serve in a protective role in many conditions. Several diseases like emesis, pain, inflammation, multiple sclerosis, anorexia, epilepsy, glaucoma, schizophrenia, cardiovascular disorders, cancer, obesity, metabolic syndrome-related diseases, Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, Alzheimer's, and even Tourette's syndrome could possibly be treated by drugs modulating our endocannabinoid system. That's huge. That's like, boom.
I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here because I don't want people to go and overstate the benefits of the endocannabinoid system. So there's a key word there, which is endo. And right now we have basically two receptors in our body, and they were discovered in the early 90s. I believe 1991 and 93. Don't quote me on that, but they were discovered right before I was born. That's how I know the general date. And what endocannabinoids are is they're a class of chemicals that your body naturally produces, and as a result, they naturally trigger specific receptors in the body, which cause your body to produce certain proteins to deal with certain problems. So in biology, everything goes back to the protein level, because proteins are the real actors, and that comes from the DNA, and then the RNA, and then you make the proteins, and the proteins are the actors. So there are known receptors for cannabinoids in the body which trigger the production of specific proteins. And those cannabinoids are supposed to naturally be produced by the body. Now, sometimes they're not. And as a result, what we've been trying to do is we've been trying to create chemical analogs that act on the cannabinoid system. Is that necessarily THC? We don't know. What it will likely be is, the analogy I like to use here is aspirin. So you know what aspirin was historically, right? Have you heard this story?
I have not.
Okay, so aspirin comes from oak bark. And the Native Americans used to boil oak bark, and then they would ingest it as a pain reliever, the water. And the oak bark contained a chemical that was analogous to aspirin, but wasn't actually aspirin. So what scientists did is they said, well, maybe there's some truth to this. And they looked into it, and they were able to synthesize a better version of the chemical that we still use to this day. That's to an extent how we got Marinol in the mid to late 80s, was a synthetic cannabinoid that was designed to target. They didn't know it was a specific receptor at the time, but they knew that this was the best binding version at that point. And so it will likely be similar to those lines. The other famous story is penicillin came from a moldy orange. So the hope is in the future that we are going to isolate and create synthetic cannabinoids that are going to work much better than the natural ones. So I don't know the potential of THC. I know it needs to be studied, because no matter what, we need to make a synthetic cannabinoid for cannabinoid deficiency. Because when there's a deficiency, we know the body doesn't function properly. Just like have you ever gotten a vitamin B12 shot or vitamin D pills, or do you take a multivitamin?
No, Dave.
Okay. These are all older people things. But the reason they do that is because there's a deficiency of that particular chemical, and as a result, they need to get it. And so we think that a lack of cannabinoid is causing problems, and we do know that hyperstimulation of the cannabinoid system can do a lot, but right now it's looking like it's not going to cure your cancer is what I'll say. It's going to help in the treatment of your cancer. I just want to be careful that we don't overstate the evidence so that people get slammed and sound like a smelly hippie.
Yes, and that's why I referenced this study so people can kind of read for it themselves. And I do appreciate in what I read, they do designate that it can serve as a protective role as opposed to offering the idea that this can cure you.
Right.
And so that again, very, very important difference to make and to point out. And again, just to point out the lack of research right now that there is not only on the endocannabinoid system, but also on THC. And so we don't have the full picture. We just don't. And that's realistically what makes cannabis and hemp and THC and endocannabinoids a really fascinating area of scientific discovery and opportunity. And it's also why it's important to, as you stated, we don't want to overstate what these are doing, right? We're walking a fine line right now, but real science is not hype. Real science is evidence, it's research, it's the scientific method, and it's being able to repeat the results of your research.
Yeah, when you're reading about this stuff, don't go to Marijuana Moment. There's a free way to look up scholarly articles. It's called Google Scholar, and it'll allow you to pull up scholarly peer-reviewed articles. If you want to go specifically to the medical field, you go to PubMed.com. They've changed the IP, PubMed. Okay. It is now ncbi.nl. Just Google PubMed. It's the first result. And that will give you over 30 million biomedical articles. And those are all peer-reviewed. Those are all hosted by NIH. And that's where you should be getting your information. When you read a story, go find the study and read the study. Because a lot of times news outlets really overhype things. The classic example was the faster than the speed of light particle that they allegedly found 4 years ago. And when you read the article, it was definitively not that. It was still really cool what they found. But be careful, folks. The worst thing you can do is overstate something. You never want to overpromise.
Yeah, I'm all about that under-promising life, really, man. Under-promise or promise on what you know you can deliver on, and if you go above and beyond, that's a big win for you.
Yeah. Nobody's ever mad when you tell them, hey, this will ease your pain, and then their cancer's gone. People get really mad when you tell them that it'll cure their cancer, and all it does is treat their pain. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but what I want to talk about is why we think that there's probably more here. And I think that's why I brought up the example of penicillin. That's why I brought up the example of aspirin. We have a lot of anecdotal and we have a lot of what I'll call soft evidence that there's things going on. We have a lot of evidence that people who use cannabis while getting chemo treatment fare better. We have evidence of a child who uses cannabis in addition to their seizure medicines in specific types of seizures does better. We have examples of children who go off their seizure medicine for specific types of seizures. The seizures cessate. There's the famous Minnesota example of that girl. Now, she did ultimately die, so it did not completely cure the disease, but she lived a lot longer than anybody thought. She was supposed to die at 7. She lives till 11. That's a huge difference for a parent.
Absolutely.
So we're seeing a ton of examples of people overperforming benchmarks, and the only thing that's changing is cannabis use. And we're starting to get a cohort of data, which is why these studies really need to be accelerated. What I don't want to happen is for it to be 2040 and realize that tens of millions of people could have lived much better lives if we had listened.
I mean, realistically, Dave, we're already there.
Yeah.
I mean, we already have tens of millions of people who could have lived better lives if research into this substance hadn't been prevented 50, 60 years ago, mostly by the Nixon administration.
Yeah, you're right. We're already there. I just don't want it on my conscience going forward.
No. As an adult in modern society, you are taking the steps that you can actively take to ensure that it doesn't happen on your watch. Whether or not the results will be successful clearly remains to be seen, but I hope in the end you'll take comfort in knowing you put in the effort, Dave.
Yeah, let it not be said that we did nothing.
No, exactly. That's the best that we can do. I know, did you have anything else, like as in relation to people pursuing CBD and like the rise of, I mean, you can buy CBD, hell, at the gas station now.
I've got a problem with how CBD is marketed. I have a very big problem with that. CBD does have some properties, but it has gotten to the point where it's they're acting like Nutrilife or Herbalife at this point. Is CBD going to help you? Probably. CBD is going to help you for some specific things. It's not going to do what you think it's going to do. Don't buy into the hype. Don't go to a gas station and buy CBD and think that it's going to do what they say. We know it has anti-inflammatory properties. We know that. That's not up for debate. How much anti-inflammatory properties, that's up to debate. It's probably not going to replace your arthritis medicine. Is it going to help? Yes. Do we see some antibacterial qualities of it? Yes. Do we see some reduction in anxiety and as a muscle relaxant? Yes. Is it better than pharmaceuticals and traditional medicine right now? The data's not there to suggest that.
Right, exactly. Yes, it can be. I know people personally who feel that it provides them more relief, and have moved to it. I've got a good buddy that the doctors want him to actively take some of these other various kind of stronger pain relievers, and he's avoided them. He's got really bad knees from a life in construction, and he is given considerable relief from CBD,
right,
and has avoided and has avoided the more costly and dangerous route of the pharmaceutical pain relievers.
The other thing
is that going to work for everybody? I don't know. I can't say that. But again, what does sort of concern me is that now it's everywhere. And I spoke with somebody who runs earlier in this year. They run a natural health shop, and they were telling me how if you're not getting CBD from, if it's not grown in a certain way, you could be getting CBD grown from hemp that has a lot of chemicals and has a lot of additives, and sort of in their mind defeats the purpose of what CBD can do for you.
The other thing I want to talk about with CBD, because you brought up a great point, and I've got 5 minutes, so I'm going to get it in there, is what I will call, quote-unquote, gap people. And that's not a derogatory term, but pharmaceuticals, there's a minimum dose, and there's a minimum side effect. So let's pretend your pain is daily 3 out of 10. Well, the pharmaceutical we have is engineered for people at 5 to 7, so it's going to be overkill, and you're going to get a lot of side effects. And will your pain be gone? Yes. But will it have knocked you out? Also, yes. Pharmaceuticals are not good for dealing with minor to moderate pain. They're not designed to do that. They're designed to deal with severe and worst case scenarios. And the problem is we don't really have anything anymore for the middle. Because if you look at what we've got Advil and Tylenol, and then we've got naproxen, and then we've got opioids. That's it. Those are your 3 options, fundamentally.
Yeah.
And for someone who's above Tylenol but below fentanyl, CBD is great. And we need to encourage people who are kind of, well, I don't want fentanyl. I don't want to be a zombie, because that means you're really not in the pain that you need to be knocked out. The reason opioids do what they do is because that's the only way to treat super severe pain. But at the end of the day, most people aren't at the point where they need opioids. They're at the point where they need a little more than Tylenol. And that's where CBD really shines, in my opinion.
Oh, and
again, not a doctor.
Not a doctor, but this is also not to mention the fact that you can utilize CBD with no psychoactive effects, no bodily effects whatsoever. Because the other thing about the pain relief from the higher end pharmaceuticals, that alters your mind and body.
Yeah,
those are to some level those are mind altering substances, which CBD is not, and it never will be.
Right, and that's also why it will never beat fentanyl for pain management.
Right.
But the reality is, you don't need fentanyl. You need your pain you need to treat your moderate pain to get through your day. And CBD provides that for people.
Yep.
And that's the real strength of CBD.
Yeah. Good stuff today, Dave. And again, I know for everyone listening live, you can find the replay of this show on the Legalize ND YouTube. Please do like and share it. Get out there and support Legalize ND. Get your petitions signed. Find out where they are locally. Become a petition gatherer in your local area. If you support the end of prohibition, that it's just the right thing to do. And we'd like to see you out there collecting signatures. Remember, you can find me, Jonah Lanto, on Facebook.com/The Good Talk Network. We release tons of weekly content with a lot of amazing guests. Coming up soon on our show,
the do-gooders.
I will actually have a gal by the name of Alana Xanadu, and she's a nutraceutical and product developer of cannabis, and she's actually part of the clinical research team at the Society of Cannabis Clinicians. So if you want to kind of learn more about the study of how cannabis as a plant, marijuana as a plant is becoming a medicine, we're going to really dive in with her. She's a really brilliant woman.
As always, thank you for listening. We like to end with a song, so I think it's my turn this week.
It's your turn this week, but if you're going to stand on ceremony, I got one.
Welcome to the Machine by Pink Floyd.